And joining me now to discuss Nigeria's progress during her 60 years of independence is the publisher, Premium Times, Dapo Olorunyomi. Good to have you join us this hour. Help us understand the significance that the media played in Nigeria attaining independence, especially when you look at the fact that some of these people also, someone like Anthony Nahoro was also an editor for Nnamdi Azikiwe's magazine.
Well, yes, thank you very much for having me on the show. I think the history of the nation has always been tied in a very intricate way with the history of our media. I think significantly we can demarcate probably three or four important moments. The period towards independence. Obviously, the media was one of the biggest tools of civic mobilization and advocacy for the cause of independence, mostly around the Lagos area, but increasingly, and it's important that you raise the name Enahoro, one of the alias principles of the Nigerian media, but who also went on to become a statesman. But besides helping to make the case for independence, I think once independence was attained, the media also helped to consecrate a case for the formation of a republic. Unfortunately, as you know, that did not endure, which ended up in the Nigerian Civil War. But even in that phase, the case for the Nigerian nation, the media was so central in helping to articulate the case for consensus after the Civil War, trying to help bring the nation together as a family. I think the most significant part in the very recent history of the nation was the role that the media played against military dictatorship for about 30 years of a very ferocious dictatorship. The media was one of the central, you could call it a putative kind of parliament that helped articulate a case for democracy and then challenge both the validity, morality, and the meaning of military rule. Eventually, military collapse, of course, with the return to democracy. And I think in one way or the other, both in terms of helping to make a case through its often anti-corruption proposals, trying to make a case for, the civic liberties of a civil society in Nigeria and of citizens, and helping to provide some kind of audit for governance and the regulatory institutions in the country. By and large, I think the media has traversed the history of our nation. I mean, it's had its own low moments, but I would say significantly, its high moments had been more of value.
So when you look at where we are today in terms of our democracy, how are we faring in terms of helping to stabilize democracy in the country?
Well, the stabilizing democracy actually meaning that ensuring that democratic structures work and that the principles and captains of the democratic order are responsive. To that extent, I would say that the media needs to do far more than it's doing, because really the media is not supposed to be a handmaiden of governance captains and actors. Its central role, as Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution has made it very clear, and as indeed both case law and all the treaty obligations that we've signed to has affirmed, the media is supposed to give a very strong audit of a democratic dispensation. So I will say that we really need to do far more. I understand the difficulties and challenges that made this a little bit of a difficulty at this point. First, we still have to be dealing with very retrogressive laws like defamation, like the so-called cyber crime law and the anti-terrorism law and like the very antiquated NBC regulatory. All these are constraints that make the effective working of a media in a democratic dispensation challenging, not to talk of, in fact, the more sinister economic conditions now through which the media must work. Of course, the COVID era now, as we have to describe our current phase of existence, has also complicated all this. So the media is really going through very, very difficult times, and you will understand that. It's made it difficult for effective professionalism to thrive.
All right, so let me
But
quickly
that,
jump in here
yeah.
because we understand that you talked about the media thriving in Nigeria. When you look at the pillars of democracy, you will talk about human rights observance, you will talk about citizens' participation and representation, accountability, but you also talk about press freedom. So what do we do now to ensure that press freedom is entrenched not just in our constitution, but in our daily practices in the country?
Well, I mean, what we have to do is to make strong advocacy for legislative reforms of the constraining media laws in the country today. I think, at last count, there are probably about 28 constraining laws that make it very difficult for the media to work. Then it is important to then understand that press freedom itself is not a mere political expression. Its fundamental meaning is the ability of the media itself to be independent, to fulfill those constitutional obligations for it, and that takes us to the terrain of the economic sustainability of the media itself. So for press freedom to really attain value and have consequence, we should find a way to build, very thriving and economically independent media. These are tough, propositions, I know, partly because of proprietorial ownership on the one hand, but also challenges with management of the sector. But this is the challenge before us, I must say. So while working to reform the laws, helping to generate fresh ideas, as you know more than I do, we work in a very dynamic industry, and the forces of technology is changing practices, how we gather our news, how we transmit them, how we finance the journalism and all that. It's so very complicated and things change almost minute by minute. So there's the need also for quick knowledge updates from time to time so that we understand that press freedom itself is not just one abstract political ideal. It is a living reality through which the institutions of journalism and of the media will be able to hold power accountable. Yeah.
I'm afraid we do have to leave it there. Publisher, Premium Times, Dapo Olorunyomi, thanks for talking to us.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.